To all of you. Today we are dealing with punctuation, and in this case it's commas, colons, and inverted commas. And there you can see what my name is, so you don't have to ask. Right, the first thing I want to remind you about is your duty to your fellow men, in particular to your family. So please take a look at this. I don't want you to do that. Neither do I want you to do this. So what I want you to do is this. Please note that if you insert a comma there, you will save your grandmother. You will save your family and your pets. There, do you see how important commas are? Let's move on. Right, looking at commas, the first thing you see, it's written there. It's for separating words in a list. That's pretty much its most common use. And there is an example of it. And seeing that we're going to be looking at colons later, please note that a colon shows that a list is following. Okay, and there you see the commas in red and highlighted in yellow. And I think you know all about that. And you will see also that I have used an Oxford comma, but don't worry, we're going to do a whole slide on that later. Then, here's another example, pretty straightforward, that you can read it for yourself. And presented by Andile, Busi, Celeste, and Daniel. And don't you like my sense of humor, because they are in alphabetical order. Right, now we've got another use for commas, separating phrases and clauses from the rest of the sentence. Here are a few examples. Right, there we are. John Mangena, comma, the pastor of the church, comma, gave an inspiring sermon. Right, and there, I'll read it to you just to make you remember it. She displayed her paintings, an impressive collection. And please note that comma in the middle. And he felt ill, which is why he stayed at home. And that was me yesterday, but never mind. Let's move on. Also looking at commas, the third use of commas, used to separate introductory words or phrases from the rest of the sentence. Okay, a few examples of that. Remember, comma, you need to use a comma. Finally, comma, check if you have used a full stop. Yes, too many sentences without full stops nowadays. As a rule, comma, people are afraid of snakes. And boy, isn't that just true in South Africa? Once again, comma, the meeting did not end on time. Story of my life. Okay. Now we are going to look at the Oxford comma. I don't know if you've been taught this before, but if you haven't, well, now you're going to discover it. Here, the actual comment, it's placed before the conjunctions and or in a list. And it's used to clarify meaning in certain sentences. It's not always required, but when it is required, it's important that it's used. Examples. This is a sentence without an Oxford comma. It does not require one. The meaning is perfectly clear by itself, but here I'm going to put an Oxford comma into it. And there you can see before the conjunction and comes an Oxford comma. Okay, it's not an error, by the way. You can use an Oxford comma anytime, but in this instance, it's not strictly required because the sentence makes sense without it. Let's try a few more. The complete order was for 3 Cokes, a steak, a pie, and fish and chips. Now, I would regard that sentence as definitely requiring an Oxford comma. Let's put it in quickly. Okay, complete order was for 3 Cokes, a steak, a pie, comma, and fish and chips. Because otherwise you've got and together, because fish and chips goes together. But it doesn't go with the pie. Okay, so If you leave out the Oxford comma there, you'd get a pie and fish and chips being ordered by one person, and that's not how it works. Good, let's try another one. You must wear comma an overcoat, a raincoat, or a hat or cap. No, I don't think that's what they had in mind. Let's try and insert our Oxford comma and see what happens. You must wear either a jacket, comma, an overcoat, comma, a raincoat, comma, or a hat or cap. Okay, there. Now that makes a lot more sense. Let's take a look at this one. One of my favorites. The meeting was attended by two crime bosses, a lawyer and a banker. Now that implies that the two crime bosses were, respectively, a lawyer and a banker. However, put in the Oxford comma and the intended meaning becomes clear. The meeting was ended by two crime bosses, comma, a lawyer, comma, and a banker. So it's a total of 4 people that are attending that meeting, not just 2, if that Oxford comma is used. Right, let's move on to colons. I love colons. Now, the first thing to remember is a colon is a, whereas a semicolon is a, okay, always remember that. It'll keep the meaning clear in your mind. They serve different functions. But today we're only going to look at the ones of the colon. So the first thing, you see there, it shows that a list is following. Okay, there we are. There's an example of a list following. Right. Colons are used to introduce quotations. Okay, and there you can see it's very clearly a quotation from the late Nelson Mandela, whom I liked, by the way. Not that he didn't make mistakes, but really, he was with a good heart. Right, you didn't fail, you gained experience. And because it's a quote, it needs a colon to introduce it. Right, used to introduce explanations. Okay, and the party was a success, colon, explanation on the way. Everyone enjoyed themselves. Okay, again, you can be sure that this is a diesel engine. Explanation coming, it has no spark plugs. This is true, by the way. Diesel engines don't have spark plugs, whereas petrol engines do. There, always an interesting extra bit of information for you in these presentations. Aren't you pleased? Now we come to inverted commas. You will see there are 2 types. There's a single and a double inverted comma. Now, when do you use which? Well, basically, the 2 of them are interchangeable. When I recommend that when you write, you use double inverted commas because it stands out more clearly on the paper. When we type, however, we use normally single inverted commas because it's just simpler, shorter, and it's perfectly clear. They're completely visible. But for handwritten stuff, I strongly recommend the double ones. They stand out more clearly. Right, they're also called quotation marks. Well, duh, they're used for quoting, but we'll look at that. Used to indicate direct speech and used when quoting. There we are. Let me just, sorry, I've got a bit of a noise coming in here. I want to see how to silence it. There we are. Sorry about that. Now, here's some examples. And here you'll notice, oh, how do you stop this thing? Oh, there, turn it on and off again. You got there, Timothy said, I'm hungry and thirsty. Now, this is direct speech. Here's direct speech in another form. Oops, I forgot to cancel that one. My apologies. That should not be there. I'm hungry and thirsty, said Timothy. But please don't put a quotation marks after that. That's wrong. I'm hungry, comma, said Timothy, comma, and thirsty. And then you'll see also with your direct speech, the full stop goes inside of the quotation marks. Okay, Lerato said, I waited for 2 hours before I got helped. Perfectly straightforward. Once again, direct speech. And here you have the quotation marks around a quote, the inverted commas around a quote. And it's a famous quote from the Bible. And there you can see it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And you notice it begins with a colon, or it's indicated by a colon that it is a quote. And that is all I have for you today, except there is a lovely task for you. This one is a lot of fun. It's a little bit more challenging than I normally do, but I'm sure anybody who has watched this presentation will be able to do it without any issues. That's it for now. I say thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you again in the very near future.